Well, I was going to say um, about these three ways. I think of that. I use the word simulacrum. These as kind of standing in for ethics for many people, and I think one thing that's behind it. Well, we had an academy once where there were a large number of very bright people in the room, well educated, and and I brought up the ethical question, and they all just rebelled immediately against any kind of ethical question. And one of the main questions was, who decides what's ethical? And and to me, I just said, well, you do, of course. I mean, who else would decide it? So notice how they're thinking of it kind of half ethical and half legal. That is, as if when I figure something out ethically, I get to impose it on you um, rather than have the reasoning convince you. So I sometimes think, so if you confront the question, how do you tell if something is right or wrong? If an action is right or wrong, ethical or unethical? And one of the things is that the answer, I'd say, is you reason it out as well as you can, taking account of the rights and needs of other people. But that's not an automatic move on most people's parts. In fact, we're often not clear how to go about doing that unless we're well versed in critical thinking. But but there are easy answers to that question. How do you tell what's right or wrong? Consult the law. It's as if we think that the law is definitive and clear, when of course it's not. But we think of it clear, so you get an easy, quick answer to it, right? And so you don't have to consider whether you're trampling on the rights of others. If the law says it's okay, it's okay. And similarly with customs, right? I don't have to consider a lot of things. I just follow the custom, and it gives me a kind of definitive answer much of the time. So it's
Mhm.
an easy way to go about it. Similarly with religion, I mean, religion has these multiple kinds of, I don't want to say religion, many religions have these multiple kinds of prohibitions or allowances, and some of them are definitively ethical. Uh, the Ten Commandments are an example of that in Judeo-Christian and Muslim uh, societies, but some of them are of a different category, like they're prohibitions because they're prohibitions. And you're supposed to listen to the prohibition. In Catholicism, it's gone now, but for a long time it was wrong to eat meat on Friday, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
it wasn't wrong for non-Christians. Even according to Christians, it wasn't wrong for non-Christians. So there was nothing built in about it. What makes it wrong is that you have a duty to obey this.
Mhm.
But notice, if you're strongly convinced, if you're strongly a member of a religious community, then you get a quick, easy answer about what's the right thing to do in many cases.
Mhm.
Whereas reasoning it out can seem mistakenly can seem so nebulous, so vague, so unwavering, when of course it's not that. So I think one of the impulses behind how people just so readily go to legal answers or to religious or to custom-based answers is that it gives me answers. It gives me answers right away to most circumstances. Um, and
Mhm.
I think that's a big draw that these others have. And here's another one that I think partakes of society, but not exactly the same way. It's the way people will say family is all important. Um, and I understand what they mean about that, but it depends on the family. It depends on what your family is like. If your family
Mhm.
is highly abusive, emotionally horrible, and engages in serial acts of violence against others, family should not be first. Family is
Mhm.
not. I mean, it's other things being equal. Family is very
Mhm.
important. But
Mhm.
so notice what's best for my family can take the place of what's best to do overall, or what's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I think of that as an important consideration in how we confuse things that seem so different as the law from
Mhm.
ethics. And
Mhm.
even I'm going on about this, but even if you think about the law, I mean, how does that work? I mean, we abide by it because there are these bunch of guys, they're almost always guys, who sit around and they decide what should be the law. and then they vote on it. So they'll do things like, what should be the punishment in the US for armed robbery? And I envision it this way. One person says 5 years, another person says life, third person says 20. Then they compromise somewhere in the middle. Notice there's not even any opportunity for reasoning about it as a whole. You're working through things and then you vote. And the result might be arbitrary. The result might be right on track or somewhere in between. So why would I ever guide my personal decisions about what's right or wrong to a bunch of guys sitting somewhere, or to what a bunch of guys 250 years ago said and wrote down in a constitution? That might be a good foundation for a society. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not a good foundation for finding out what's right or wrong for me to do in any certain circumstance. Slavery is a good example of that you brought up before.
Well, Gerald, there's a lot. I was trying to take down a few notes, and